You know, I love Britain. I really love Britain. But at some point, you have to ask, is it going to get a grip on all these massively problematic cultural, demographic, extremist issues where they are basically allowing hatred to run riot across British towns, cities, capitals, and it's frankly a question of whether they have a backbone and enough willingness to say it's time for moral clarity, not ambiguity, not, well, you've got to look at it from both sides and they've got a point and they're upset. No, moral clarity. There is such a thing as right and wrong. And they had, over the weekend, a rally for Quds Day, which is basically a celebration of extremism, anti-Jewish, anti-Western, anti-Israel, anti-British, quite frankly, bile. And I want to show you some of the clips from this obscene scene. Alon Levy wrote, Britain, at some point, you're going to have to decide if you want to do something about this or continue to pretend it isn't happening until, and this is the key part at the end, until there's nothing left to do. Here they are in central London at the Quds rally yelling Margbar Amrika, Margbar Israel, which is Persian for death to America and death to Israel.
Translated.
And they had the infamous Bob Vylan, the musician who performed at Glastonbury and said death to the IDF, doing the exact same thing here, chanting death to the IDF, which is just another rallying cry for death to the Jews. And they're saying it. Death to America, death to Israel. That's what they want. They want death. Be in no doubt, that flag over there represents nothing less than wanting the destruction of the Jews, and of the West for that matter, which wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the Torah. That's what it represents. And their whole, well, it's about occupation and injustice. No, it's not. Why would you be calling for death to Israel? The whole thing is sick. Let's see what else we see here. They're trying to stop us from doing our job. Alex Armstrong reports from the Al-Quds demonstration in London where he's confronted by protesters. We'll have a look at that in a moment. But before we do, I want to show you some more footage showing, look, you are not mad enough until you realise that right there is the Taliban flag being flown among the murderous Islamic Republic flag in London during a banned Al-Quds rally, which wasn't anything near banned. I think what they said was, we're going to not have it as a march anymore where they walk, but they'll allow it to be a stationary one. Unbelievable stuff. Unbelievable indeed. Have a look at this. They've got the Ayatollah, and it says, choose the right side of history. I kind of feel almost bad for them right now. They must be demoralised with the way things have all been going over the past couple of years.
Family, friends, ladies, and man them. Assalamu alaikum. And thank you all for being here today, and for those watching behind the scenes. And massive thank you to Islamic Human Rights Commission for pulling off another successful...
Stop bombing children. Yeah, I don't think you're so concerned with that. Where were you a few weeks ago during the Iranian massacre of 40,000, seems roughly that amount, civilians indiscriminately killed by the Iranian regime? Got nothing to say there. But when Israel goes to war against a terrorist group that is killing children and Israelis and Jews indiscriminately, and it looks like almost half those killed were Hamas, which is the most impressive achievement, quote unquote, given that it is highly densely urban, highly populated zone, tiny zone, and you call that a genocide? It's just stupid sentiment that is trying to blood libel Jews when you see stuff like that. It's nothing more and nothing less than that. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer is pandering to these parts of the British electorate by saying we're not involved in the Iran conflict. Even now, even when Trump is saying that he could do with using Britain's air bases.
Now, it's clear the US operation has massively weakened the military capability of the abhorrent regime in Iran. The question is, what comes next? When the fighting stops, we are going to need some sort of negotiated agreement to constrain the threat posed by Iran.
This is what I mean, by the way, by the the weakness that can exist within the British spirit. When they can get a grip, sometimes they pull back just from the edge, just from the abyss. They do that often throughout history. But at its worst, the British spirit can just be so morally ambiguous about these issues, and that's precisely what Starmer's doing there. Notice that he doesn't mention Israel, by the way. Meanwhile, there were patriotic Iranians who came to celebrate in London across from the hateful genocidal imperial regime-sponsored Quds Day protests. So that's nice. It's nice to see that there's these counter-protests now and counter-demos, so people don't think that the momentum is all with the anti-Israel, anti-Western, pro-Iranian regime. Very important for people to see that. But let's see what actually happened when Alex Armstrong went to speak to the protesters.
We're just here. I'm asking very, very non-agitating questions as to why they're here, why they think it's important, but they don't want us to talk to these people. I think the audience can make their mind up as to why that might be. You've got to have a special green pass here to speak to people like us here at GB News, Andrew. But you can see lots of protests, not just about Iran, but a lot about Palestine as well. I don't know if we can see here pictures of Moshtaba Khamenei. Of course, guys, if you want to protest, you should be on that side. This is pedestrians. We're obviously they're trying to stop us doing our job now. This is, of course, this is a pedestrian part of the protest. So what they're not allowed to do is they shouldn't be actually coming up to me here, Andrew, doing this. You guys need to be on that side of the barrier or the police will arrest you. So please move along. This is the sort of stuff we get when we're trying to just report the news. We're just trying to report the news and report the protests. Of course, these gentlemen here are actually not allowed to be legally doing this. They could get in a lot of trouble. They should be on that side of the protest. However, Andrew, we're just trying to report what's going on in Britain. We will, of course, go to the other protests shortly to show you that as well. These gentlemen are free to protest. Now they're moving along, great. But that's the sort of stuff I've been getting today, Andrew. Of course, lots of people very, very upset about us being here. But, this is what we do. We report both sides of the story. You might notice I've got a friend here as well. He was here last week at the protest too. Andrew, look, very, very tense atmosphere here today. Hard for me to do my job, just to report the news. This gentleman back here again today. You GB News viewers will be familiar with him from last week. But look, I'm just here trying to do my job. I want to hear what these people have to say. I want to report the news, and that is what we try to do at GB News, report both sides fairly, which is what we did last weekend. However, we are being stopped doing that this week.
And of course, Alex, you mentioned the Islamic Human Rights Commission. They, of course, who are one of the organisers of this protest today, they put out a statement deploring the assassination of the corrupt, hideous, evil Ayatollah on the first day of the war. They thought it was they described him as a man who's resisted oppression and stood on the right side of history. That's the shower that's organised this march in London today.
Yeah, that's right. That is the Islamic Human Rights Commission. You'll see them printed banner over there behind me. They're quite a big grouping of them here today. This is their organisation, of course. Quite a bit of a controversial one, I have to say. The audience can do their own research on that, and I will do a bit of report on that tonight. They have laid this protest on every single year. In fact, they were just up on stage not that long ago saying that thugs tried to stop them and banned them from protesting. But of course, they have still been able to pull this off. That is their right to protest, but it's going to cost the taxpayer millions.
Well, I have to say, by the way, talk about their right to protest. I believe was it in Austria or Germany? They banned the chants from the river to the sea. They say there comes a point at which you are just inciting hatred and you're inciting violence. Death to the IDF. that's basically call for death to the Jews, because this is if you're saying death to the British army, you're basically saying that Britain has no right to live. Because if you don't have an army, then you can't live. So it's calling for the genocide of the Jewish people. And if you're going to have hate speech laws, why doesn't that qualify? At some point, Britain and the West has to decide, are we going to let these anti-Western extremists, anti-Israel, anti-Jewish extremists utilize Western freedoms in order to destroy it from within? Or are we going to put in certain barriers, certain red lines, draw certain red lines so that we can protect what we have? That's the question. That really is the question. We'll continue with the report in a second. Just, if you haven't already, please do hit the subscribe button on JTV. Please like our videos, comment, hype our videos. All these things really, really help us to grow, get into the algorithm, and you can really help us to spread the word about all this stuff. So thank you.
Millions of pounds. There are police here from Cheshire, we've seen police vans from everywhere actually, Andrew. Buses and coaches of people being brought in today to this protest. So this is really difficult for the police, and the taxpayer will be wondering whether this is a good use of police time, considering how many crimes are going unsolved in Britain. But of course the police are just doing their best to keep the peace today in London, as is now happening every weekend.
Funny, I can hear, Alex, behind you, a woman speaking at the demonstration. She wouldn't be able to do that in Iran, would she?
That's very true, Andrew. This is a privilege we have living in a Western democracy. Iranian women would never be allowed to do anything like this in Iran, which I think is always the hypocrisy of events like this, is that when actually you do try and tell people that, they don't want to hear it, Andrew. They're very resistant to hearing the truth about that. But of course, you can see women up on the stage right now addressing the crowds. I'd say a bit of a mixed reception here today. The atmosphere does really feel quite tense among these people. Now, what do you think you're going to find next time you speak to me, Andrew, is that I will be back over there to see if those are more Iranians over there, or if there are more Iranians over here. That will be the interesting part the next time I see you, Andrew.
I actually think part of the reason as I said, that it's tense is because they used to feel the momentum is with them, but now not so much. And of course, here is Bob Vylan, as I mentioned before, leading his favourite chant that he did at Glastonbury, like the British equivalent of Coachella, massive music concert, pop concert. It's really more like a festival. But have a watch of where he did the exact same chant just now again.
And I would like to conclude with death to the IDF, death to the IDF, death to the IDF, death to the IDF, death to the IDF.
You know, it's interesting, isn't it? Even at the pro-Israel and pro-American rallies, where they would be very happy that the Ayatollah is killed, you don't hear them chanting death to Hamas, death to Khomeini, all that kind of stuff. Because this is not a movement focused on darkness and death. Yes, we know that size you have to kill, you have to eliminate in order to protect, in order to preserve goodness and freedom and all of that, but that's not what we're about. The fact that they cheer and they dance and they celebrate about death, the whole thing is sick. Interesting, by the way, that you'll see there's a few religious Jews in the background up there as props, basically, to sort of claim that, no, I'm not against Jews, I'm just against Zionism. When you should know the vast, vast majority of even ultra-Orthodox Jews are Zionists. And these ultra-Orthodox Jews, ask them privately, they'll tell you they do believe that the Jewish people will have Israel as their state just only when the Messiah comes, and they believe that we should be in a state of perpetual exile until then. So even they would acknowledge that anti-Zionism is a form of not having a state of Israel is a form of second-class status. They just think it's divinely mandated. So they would acknowledge that it's a form of anti-Semitism too. Again, they are a tiny, tiny, tiny fringe of even the ultra-Orthodox world. But this nonsense that so many people try to push, that there's a separation between Judaism and Zionism, is absurd. And this happens to be the next documentary we're releasing on JTV+, j-tv.plus. We're doing a new documentary. It's coming out probably tomorrow, actually, called Zionism and Judaism, The False Separation. Because for too long, people have been trying to push this narrative that I'm not against Jews or Judaism, I'm just against the Zionists. Well, it turns out there's no difference. if you're against the Jews having a right to their own home, if you're against the Jews living in their home, that is the fundamental building block of Judaism. It is about us having a land, the land of Israel, the people of Israel having a land of Israel, and they're serving the God of Israel. It's all connected. It's all connected. But anyway, back to Britain. What's going to be? What is Britain going to decide? Very hard to predict. Will it pull back from the abyss, or will it walk off the cliff? It's up to the British people to decide. The Palestinians. We have been told they are an ancient people fighting for their homeland which has been stolen from them. This narrative has fueled decades of conflict, painting Israel as an occupier of stolen land. But what if this identity is not of an ancient nation, but a modern, cynical invention? A political construct designed not to build a state, but to dismantle the Jewish one. In this JTV Plus documentary, we're going to uncover the truth behind the creation of the Palestinian identity, how it was forged in the fires of pan-Arabism, absent in historical records until strategically rebranded in the 1960s by leaders like Egyptian-born Yasser Arafat to rally global opposition against Israel. We'll trace its roots from the Ottoman era, where Palestine was a region without a distinct people, through the pre-1948 years of Arab rejectionism, before focusing on the pivotal shift of the 1960s, when Arafat declared we should now be known as Palestinians, inventing symbols like the flag to mask genocidal aims. This wasn't about self-determination, it was about exploiting refugees, suppressing true aspirations under Arab rule, and perpetuating a war to destroy Israel. Join us as we debunk the myths of an ancient Palestinian nation, expose the strategic manipulation, and reveal how this construct has hindered peace while fueling hate. Fair but firm, this is the story of an identity weaponized not for building a future, but for erasing one. To watch this JTV Plus documentary and access much more premium content, click on the link in the video description.